Today's dessert video is one of my favorites. I'm showing you today how to make a letter cookie cake, which would be perfect for a birthday, a party, an anniversary, really whatever you want. If you don't want to make a personalized letter, you could also use the same recipe and make it into a number, which would be super cute for like a first birthday or something like that. For this recipe, we're first making a shortbread cookie, and then we're layering that in between strawberry Swiss meringue buttercream. Finally, we can't forget decorations, so on top, we are decorating this whole cake with some berries and mint leaves. It looks really elegant, and if you make it for anybody, they are gonna be so surprised and really enjoy eating it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and stick around for more. I love baking videos, so there will be lots more coming. This recipe takes a little bit of time, but trust me, it's going to be so worth it at the end. We're gonna start out by first making our shortbread cookie. To a mixing bowl, add quite a bit of butter, as you can see, along with your sugar and vanilla extract. Then turn your electric mixer or stand mixer onto medium speed and cream the butter until it's light and fluffy. This needs about a full 2 to 3 minutes in order to get to the correct consistency, and many home chefs don't allow their butter to beat for a long enough time. Once it's light and fluffy, then you can move along to measuring out your dry ingredients. I would always suggest measuring your dry ingredients using a scale. However, if you don't have this on hand, make sure that you're correctly measuring your flour volumetrically. To a measuring cup, add flour that has been fluffed so that way it's not packed too densely, and then level it off with a knife. This is going to ensure that you have the most accurate measurements. Don't forget to also add your salt into the flour, and then it's time to combine your butter and your flour. I always place my mixer on low speed as to ensure that flour doesn't get everywhere when it starts to mix together. And then just start slowly adding in the flour in small batches. At this point, the dough should be pretty smooth and sticky, so we're going to need to allow it to rest in the fridge for a little bit to firm up. Grab your plastic wrap and get 2 pieces of plastic wrap. We're making 2 cookies, so it's just easier to have the dough separated at this point. Divide the dough in half, and then I like to shape my dough into 2 equal rectangles. Again, this just helps us with the next step and makes rolling out a little bit easier. Then it's into the fridge for about 60 to 75 minutes until the dough firms up. Once you've checked and the dough is nice and firm, go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then it's time to roll out the dough. I like to generously spread some flour on my clean countertop and then place the dough along with additional flour on top. We're trying to roll this dough out into an 8.5 inch by 11 inch rectangle. It should be about ½ inch thick. This takes some time to roll out the dough and to push any cracks that may form together, so just take your time and have fun with it. There will definitely be cracks along the way, so you can patch those up as you go. Try to make the dough as smooth as possible once you're finally done rolling it. You can also use a bench scraper to help you keep the sides of the dough nice and straight, especially if you're going to cut a letter with a straight edge. Moving on, we are going to cut out our letter template. I will link a freebie where you can get these letters in the description below. Now think of this letter as a guide. I always keep in mind the serving platter that I'm going to put this cookie on. So since my serving platter is a little bit bigger than this template, I'm going to use the template as a guide, but not as an exact measurement for my cookie. So don't feel like you have to use this template to cut the exact size as it is. I always like to use a sharp paring knife for this process to cut along the letters, and then make sure to remove any of the excess dough when you're done cutting. If you have any letters that have inside cutouts, don't forget to cut those out as well. Once you've got all of the dough, take a spatula and make sure that none of the edges of the cookie are stuck to the counter. You have to be pretty gentle with the cookie at this stage. Do the best that you can. I know it's large, but I find that using 2 spatulas to actually move the cookie to the baking sheet helps a lot. I always line my baking sheet with either a Silpat or parchment paper in order to keep the cookie from browning too much on the bottom. Now don't forget to cut out your second cookie. Remember, we have 2 letters that need need to be approximately the same size and shape. And then those cookies go into the oven for about 18 to 22 minutes. Make sure to flip the baking racks halfway through, and then you'll look for a cookie that's lightly golden brown around the edges. While that's cooking, we are going to make our Swiss meringue buttercream. Anytime you make a meringue-based dessert, it can be tricky if you have any oil left on your utensils. So in order to ensure success, I like to use white vinegar to get off any possible oils that we have on our mixing bowl or attachment. You'll actually need your whisk attachment for this. I accidentally grabbed my paddle attachment, so make sure that you have your whisk attachment instead. Once those are all cleaned, we are going to fill a medium pot with a couple inches of water and bring that to a gentle simmer over medium-low heat. Remember, this is Swiss method for making meringue because we're making Swiss meringue buttercream. So to do this, you're going to add your egg whites and your sugar to a heat-proof bowl that can sit on top of that pot without touching the water. This is what we call in the chef world a bain-marie. Then we are going to heat, stirring constantly until the mixture reaches 160 degrees Fahrenheit on an instant read thermometer. You can see throughout this process just how much the egg whites change. They go from yellow to foamy and white, which really just means that we've kind of cooked the eggs. Once these eggs have reached temperature, you're going to transfer it to your mixer bowl and whip on high speed until the egg whites reach stiff peaks and the mixing bowl is no longer warm to the touch. Your stiff peaks should stand straight up, and you'll also know that you're ready because you can fully flip the bowl over and nothing falls out. Once you've checked that and you're at the right stage, it's time to add our butter in. We're going to very slowly add the butter in, about a tablespoon at a time. You don't want to add too much fat all at once. It's just a very slow process to incorporate all of this butter. Then we're going to add in some flavor enhancers, including salt, vanilla, and our strawberry jam. At this point, my buttercream sort of starts to look curdled, which is okay. It totally happens. I will link some troubleshooting steps that you can read all about in the blog post. But usually if you just let the mixture continue to beat for a little bit longer, it will stop looking curdled. Now that this buttercream is finished, you can see that there's a lot of air in it. So we have to deflate the buttercream by hand using a rubber spatula in order to help avoid any big air bubbles when we go to pipe the frosting. I just press the frosting around the side of the mixing bowl and continue to do this until it seems like most of the air bubbles are out of the buttercream. You can also use a paddle attachment if it has the silicone rubber on the side. That would also work great to help push all of the air out. Next, we're going to prepare our piping tip with a round tip. I use the Wilton 2A, and to do this, simply add the tip in, and then I like to push part of the side of the piping bag into the piping tip to ensure that nothing leaks out. I also use a tall glass and put in all of the buttercream that can fit into your bag, and then set that buttercream to the side. Meanwhile, we've allowed our cookies to cool. A pro tip, you can even put them in the freezer, which helps them firm up quite a bit and makes transporting to your serving tray really easy. First, we're going to decorate the cookie by piping on the Swiss meringue buttercream. Don't stress if it's not perfect because we're going to put another cookie on top. Try to layer the cookie as evenly as possible. You can also grab a ruler and check that it's kind of even on each side. And then we're going to repeat our piping with another layer of the buttercream on top of the second cookie. I try to do this one a little bit neater because you can see it since it is the top of the cookie cake. And then my favorite and final part, we're decorating with a bunch of different berries. For this particular recipe, I'm using strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries. And just kind of put them in whatever decorative pattern your heart desires. This is the fun part of making the cookie cake. You get to be creative and do your own design. My technique was kind of varying the colors that go next to each other, so that way there's a pop of blue but also a pop of red. And then finally we're finishing it off with some mint leaves. I love this. It adds in just a little bit more greenery into the cookie cake. And then you can serve the cookie cake immediately or gently cover it with plastic wrap and leave it at room temperature for up to 8 hours. This does taste best at room temperature, so think about and plan that out before serving it. The full recipe along with tips and tricks will be linked in the description below. I can't wait to see your creations.